I'm Patrick Varhue, a senior here at East Long Meadow High School, and I will be moderating tonight's school committee debate. With me, I have our three candidates who are looking for your vote on June 6th. We are taping this in the LCAT studio on May 11th. I will ask questions related to a number of different issues to help the voters make a qualified decision on June 6th. Now, I will introduce our three candidates. First, Mr. Richard Ficero. Mr. Ficero served as the East Long Meadow High School principal for 23 years, has served on the school committee for the past 6 years, has been a part of a variety of different organizations in town, such as the Knights of Columbus, the East Long Meadow Insurance Advisory Committee, and Unico. He's also the father of 2 East Long Meadow High School graduates. Next, we have Mr. Gregory Johnson. Mr. Thompson is a small business owner and former elementary school teacher. He served on the Board of Library Trustees for 3 years, and then was elected to the school committee where he served for the past 9 years. He's also the father to 2 students in the East Long Meadow public school system. And finally, the challenger, Mr. Jonathan Torsha. Mr. Torsha is an East Long Meadow High School senior who has served in a variety of different capacities at the high school. He served as his class president in both his freshman and junior years, as part of both the Model Congress Club and the debate team, and has served on the school council since 2014. Mr. Torsha has also worked on the East Long Meadow Cultural Council since 2015. Now, I will give each candidate the opportunity to give a 60-second opening statement. Mr. Ficero, you may go first.
Thank you very much, Patrick. First, my deepest respect to both the candidates here and also to LCAT for hosting this event. In my opening statement, I wish to focus on passion with a purpose. I'm going to explain what I mean by passion with a purpose. That's what happens when an effective leader promotes a positiveness throughout the organization where people feel like they can succeed, where people feel like they can do their very best. In other words, the people in the East Long Meadow school system, staff regardless of position, and students regardless of age, feel a positiveness, feel a sense of community, a sense of family, and most of all, a sense of success. And that happens by being an effective leader, which I am. I've done it for 23 years as a principal and 6 years as a school committee member. And when I bring a quality such as compassion, understanding, integrity, empathy, and most of all, visibility. And I take those qualities in being a passionate leader and do it with a purpose. Hence, passion with a purpose. The first purpose is, I guess I'm done.
Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Patrick. Also want to acknowledge both my fellow candidates and certainly congratulate both of you and thank you both for wanting to serve on the school committee. I am Greg Thompson. I have been on the committee now for 9 years. I think I've learned through the process about budgets and about the town itself. It's a small town, East Long Meadow, that has a lot going on, and it's important for us all to get involved as part of the town. And what my goal has been as one of 5 members of the committee has just to bring to the table my role as a father of 2 young students within the school district, my role as a family member. I'm one of 4 generations of my family that have lived in East Long Meadow now for a very long time, and just one of the community. This is a great town to be in. I see people out and about around town, soccer games, lacrosse games, at the grocery store, whatever. And it's nice to be able to talk about issues that we're all interested in, because really it's all local. The school, there's nothing more important in a community than its schools. And so to be a part of that and to give my time and my past experience is important to me, and I hope to continue that going forward. Thank you.
Mr. Torsha.
Well, first I want to start off in thanking LCAT for hosting this debate. I also want to thank my opponents who have done a number of years of service already on the school committee, so I want to thank them for their service. So really, I've always been passionate about educational issues, school issues during my time in the high school. The 3 platforms part of my candidacy that I've wanted to highlight is keeping up with fiscal responsibility, using our tax dollars effectively, as well as then combating the drug issue. That has been a strong issue that's been affecting students and people across the community, and I'd like to take a look at that issue. And the third and most and final important issue I would like to take a look at is strengthening the communication between the community and the school system. I think a good school system, a productive school system, and a successful school system will translate inside the community. And talking and reaching out to the people that might not already be a part of the school committee and the school system in some type of way, it's going to be important to bringing the community involved, considering we have a number of major things that will be coming up over the next couple of years. And staying committed to making each student a well-rounded individual to be successful in the workforce and be successful in life later on. It's most important. The kids count the most.
Oh, awesome. So now we will begin the question and answer part of the debate. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer each original question and 45 seconds to answer any follow-up question. Mr. Ficero, this year the school committee submitted a proposed budget that included 3 new priorities to the town manager, constituting a slight raise in the town budget. What priorities do you foresee the school committee submitting in the coming years, and what effect will they have on the operating budget?
Well, I think that when I think of the budget, I think of 2 facts. First is that we have to make sure that our budget is centered on student achievement. We want to make sure that our students are achieving well. And the latest data shows that our students are achieving remarkably well. That's number one. Number 2 is that we must have a budget that is fiscally responsible. You're going to probably hear that a lot tonight. I think we've done that very well. Once again, the data shows that. For example, we have asked for minimal increases in the past 6 years, averaging around 2%. Now, with that minimal increase, how have we kept up with student achievement? And we've done that in 3 ways. The first way we do that is we work very well with town departments. Examples would be negotiating with the new form of government, the town council. As you mentioned, we achieved the budget we wanted to receive by a lot of negotiations, discussions, debates, and so on. The second strategy we have to use to reach our priorities is to negotiate smartly. 85% of our budget is personnel. And so that means that when we negotiate with the different associations, we have to make sure that we negotiate smartly. That means that we balance the needs of the employee with the needs of our town and our budget. Keep a balance there. And thirdly, we have to be creative. We've done this very well in the school committee. The example I could give you, and there are many, is that we went to the Community Preservation Committee and begged them, fought with them, opposed to them, putting 3 playgrounds on our elementary schools. And after a long process, we were able to do that. So Patrick, when you ask for priorities, they change each year. But we must remain working with our town groups. We must be working in the negotiations smartly with our associations. And thirdly, we must be very creative. But the centerpiece of all this is student achievement, educationally sound, and fiscally responsible.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, your thoughts?
So this year, actually, we had multiple requests. The final 3 requests that it seems to be coming together with the town council are those that you discussed. There's always things that we can do inside the schools. A lot of it, we can look at capital projects, capital investments. We have some older schools in the district. There's talk about the high school and potential a new building of a high school. What we've done in the past is, look at it as it comes our way. We have quarterly budget updates from our assistant superintendent, and we make short-term and long-term plans. As Mr. Ficero said, centered around the students and student learning. Our per capita cost is relatively low, certainly well below the state average. But I think we get a lot of bang for our buck. People move to East Long Meadow for its education. There's a reality to that. So the other side of it is working with the town council, brand new form of government. It's been an interesting process for us as a committee to find our way collectively. All new members on that board, new town manager, and interesting process this year. We're hoping going forward it smooths out even better. We're certainly keeping communication open with them, trying to answer any questions that the committee may have, the council may have, and the town manager may have. And I think we do that well. I think also we have a great staff in central office. Our superintendent, Gordon Smith, who's been around a couple of years now, is doing a fantastic job. And certainly, he and the staff are always keeping an eye on the budget, and as I said, it's a good place. It's why my wife and I decided to move back to East Long Meadow years ago to raise our children here, because it's a good place for kids. It's a good education, and we want to stay focused on that going forward.
Great. Mr. Torture, your thoughts?
I think one of the most important things about the budget over the coming years is certainly going to be capital projects. As Mr. Thompson mentioned, obviously looking at the new high school, but also looking at capital projects, currently. Just today, As I was in school today, we had unfortunately a pipe burst, and there was some minor flooding inside the freshman hall. And while that's a relatively small thing, I think making sure that we address those most critical, most important things in our infrastructure that are going on right now. Certainly, as well, communication. Keeping a positive dialogue between the town council and the school committee is going to be really important to get the necessary funds, the necessary things that we need to make student education greater and better. So I would say capital projects are certainly the most important thing that we're going to come across in the next year. And I would say without a doubt, though, over the last couple of years, we've certainly had a good education system.
Okay, Mr. Thompson. For each of the past 4 years, East Longmeadow has submitted a statement of interest to the MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority, in order to try and receive state funding for the construction of a new high school. Are you optimistic that the state will invite us into the process before the town has to invest substantial funds into the building? What options will the town have to consider if we are not invited in?
That's a great question, because that's really what we're dealing with, specifically with this building. The MSBA is a state organization that provides funding for towns for their buildings, for the school buildings. And we've, as you said, applied the last 4 years. And it's an interesting process. Again, it's a learning to all this sort of thing. As we go through the process and we give our statement of interest and we're told, you're given credit for maintaining your building, in our rejections, in our past 3 rejections, we've also been told we can't fund your project. We have buildings that are condemned. We must fund those first. Well, clearly that's not the same logic. So it's playing that, finding that right sweet spot. My thought and the committee and certainly the superintendent and staff has always been to maintain the building and not to let it go. It's not fair to students that are in the building to let it go, and we take pride in what we have as a town. So we take care of it. We have a great relationship with the Department of Public Works. They've done great energy efficiency improvements in this building as well as townwide. And it's important that we collectively work the process forward. You asked if we're optimistic about it. We have to be optimistic. We put a lot of time and effort into it. The statement of interest, we review every year that we put it in. It originated from a full study of the high school. And so there's a lot of time and energy involved. And there's an interest in the community for it. I hear the question all the time from people on the sidelines or out in restaurants around town. What's going on in the high school? What's the plan with the high school? And so we can say, well, we've applied again. We're hopeful to be entered into the process, and we should know, within the next year or two, whether or not we'll be entering the process. If not, we're going to have to think about a secondary option, whether we as a town decide to collectively invest in the existing building and bring it up to snuff, and then do with it as we can. If we look at a new project, about $110 to $120 million, 50% reimbursement from the state MSBA, then we're looking at about $50 to $60 million in investment. We could, if we're not invited into the MSBA, do we as a town want to take that same pool of money, so not the whole 120, but take a look at the 50 to 60 and invest it in the building? Certainly there are things that could be invested. We've identified $25 to $30 million of just maintenance projects on this building, which is why it makes sense to go forward with a new building if the state invites us in. So that's a question that will continually ongoing, and it's a whole other process once the state says go. Then we got a lot of work ahead of us from there.
Great. Mr. Torcher.
I would say no. This is a very important question. This has been certainly one of the most, asked questions that I've seen over the last couple of weeks. I would say, a couple of questions, a couple of the options we have. We have the statement of interest, of course, that we've now submitted now for a couple of years. I think if we whether we get into it or whether we don't get into it, I think the really important thing we're going to have to remember is we'll still be paying, tens of millions of dollars. And considering we are getting close to our tax levy limit, it's going to be important to remember that considering everyone inside the community, not just people inside the school, but people that are on fixed incomes, other taxpayers as well, and keeping in mind, what would be not only most successful for the students, for their success and for their safety, but as well as what would be the more fiscally approachable item. So I would take a look aggressively at seeing, what are the exact numbers, what are the exact areas in which, we have the most critical areas of infrastructure we need to improve before making a complete decision on the decision of a high school. But I think that's something to keep significantly in mind, that we are nearing that tax levy. So when we decide this big ticket purchase item.
All right, Mr. Vaccaro.
Yes, I think the key word is we have to remain optimistic. As already stated, 4 times we have applied for the SOI, and I think we continue to apply until we get accepted. We've had 1 visit, which I think is going to help us in this pursuit. But I think we really have to look at this high school, and we have to make some type of movement for 2 reasons. First is our infrastructure is falling apart. It's 57 years old. Our director of facilities has warned us that if we lose a certain electrical part, we might have to shut this building down for a period of time. So our plumbing, our infrastructure really has to be electrical, really has to be upgraded. And if you already heard, they're talking 25 to 30 million. Secondly, we've got to look at student achievement again. This school was built in 1960 for a 1960 education. We're now in the 21st century, and that demands 21st century learning skills, such as you need certain learning spaces which allow for collaboration, critical thinking, critical analysis. We don't have that in this building. It's been for 23 years. I can vouch that it's a great building. We maintain it. We keep it. The director, the DPW does a wonderful job in maintaining this building, but it's outgrown itself. It really has outgrown itself both through the infrastructure and secondly, most importantly, through student achievement. We can't give a 21st century. In fact, we can't even put more technology in this building. Our electrical grid is full. So any technology we add, something has to be taken away. So it really hurts, I think, our students if we don't get a new building or some type of decision, being a renovation, to make this building a 21st century school for all our students in the future.
Great, thank you. Mr. Torsha, East Longmeadow High School students must pay $149 to play any sport at the high school. Both Longmeadow High and Minnechaug have adopted a tiered system based on the school expenditure for a sport. Do you feel it is fair that students who, say, run cross-country or are cheerleaders are required to pay the same as hockey players who are given considerably more equipment and require the rental of a rink? If not, what changes do you think need to be made to ensure that sports fees are fair for both the student-athlete and the school?
Well, first and foremost, I would take a look at reaching out to students and reaching out to different people, whether maybe a tier system would be a good idea. But I would say right now, as somebody who's run track and cross country, and then somebody who's done swimming, I would say at the moment, it's a general. We have a generally fair system right now. Obviously, keeping in mind if we were to do some type of different system where some people would be paying less and some people would be paying more, we have to keep in mind that there's people who might want to do hockey but might not completely have the money for it. So this system that we have right now adopts in which people can affordably make and be on the hockey team or the football team or maybe more expensive sports that would require sports for it. So I think it's a fine system we have right now, but I would definitely take a look into the tier system, whether that would be a better system and would not dramatically affect people's financial situations and preventing, particularly making sure we don't we're in the event where we prevent people from playing sports, because obviously that's a cornerstone to being a high schooler, certainly.
Mr. Vaccaro, as a former principal who oversaw the sports
Lived
and
with
the
it,
activities,
yes.
your thoughts on this issue?
Having lived with this, just a little history. I was there when it first went into effect, which was the early 2000s. We had drastic cuts in our budget. And in order to keep our teaching staff solvent, our learning solvent, we had to find other means of revenue. And this is what evolved into the user fees. And we did have a tiered system. In 2004, we hit the depths of it. It was $120 to play like a sport track. It was around $250 for baseball or basketball, and $360 for hockey and skiing, etc. On top of that, we charged $25 club fee. So if you want to be on the Key Club, which is a charity organization, you had to pay $25. So that was the depth of it. But the school committee has worked very well involved in addressing that. Our budget for athletics is $513,000. That's a lot of money. And what the school committee has done over the years is put more money in the operational budget to kind of stabilize that user fee. So now we're at $149, and it stayed that way for the last 7 years because the school committee worked in adding more to the operational budget. I'm going to repeat that. Secondly, we've added a uniform allowance. So that each year we are processing uniforms in a rotation. So by doing those type of things, we've kind of relieved, I think, some of the demands on the Booster Club. We've also relieved keeping that user fee at a respectable rate, $149. In fact, the Recreation Department charges $100 for some sports. So we're right in line with that. And lastly, the reason we went to one user pay was my argument with the school committee that we should treat everybody, all opportunities equally. For example, if I'm in biology, the cost of that course is much less than AP biology. So I said our philosophy in this community has always been to give all students the maximum opportunity for success. So by going with a one user fee, it gave all students the opportunity to participate in whatever sport they wanted. And that was the reason for it.
Okay, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, and you know, the 149 is not the whole budget for sports, obviously. So I think the 149 is more of a just the ability to play a sport, and the sports fee goes right along with it. And so to keep it at the low level, if you look back, we've had these discussions every year. We talk about the sports fee. You know, certainly I've been a proponent of keeping it as low as possible. You know, my goal is to keep it down so when my kids get there, you know, it's not $300-400. So I've been vocal on that all the way through because I think it's important that kids are participate in something and are part of a club or part of a team outside of just the regular class day. So the more access we can allow, the more kids are going to participate, and that's what it's really all about. You know, I remember being a kid and being on a team, and it really shapes you as an individual and shapes your whole high school experience. You know, gives you even some sort of an identity, whether it's a club or Spartanum or being on or playing an instrument or being on a sports team. So, you know, again, my goal is to keep that number as low as possible so that we can have as much participation as possible.
Okay, continuing with sports fees, Mr. Vaccaro, in 2011, the school committee voted to raise the sports fee to $149, as you touched on before. Neighboring communities have raised their sports fees over the past few years, and some schools average at over $200 per sport. For example, ice hockey in Longmeadow costs $600 per student. How can you make sure that sports fees don't continue to rise?
Well, I think it goes back to the question you asked first, which was on our budget. We have to remain centered on student achievement, and that includes also what we call the other half of student life, which is co-curricular activities. And I think it's important that we as a school committee continue to look at that operational budget and find ways to keep that user fee at $149 at least. And I think we should also look at ways to reduce it. Now, how do you do that? Once again, Patrick, you've got to be creative. When we first put the user fee in back in 2001, I think it was, we had raffles, we had fundraisers, a number of things to keep that user fee down. So you're going to have to be, once again, I'm going to say creative. Also, it has to be commitment from the school committee. I mean, first and foremost comes student achievement, but you also want to balance that because athletics, and let's say clubs, help a student's resume. We want our students to go to the best schools and colleges. And if you don't have something on that resume that shows that you're a well-rounded student, that has had a comprehensive education, then that could hurt your application. So we have to make sure that we center on keeping the user fee where it is, and then secondly, being creative and trying to find ways to continue a revenue stream.
Awesome. Mr. Thompson, you voted against the raise in 2011. Your thoughts now?
Yeah, as I said, you know, my goal has always been to keep that fee as low as possible, and I know that's the goal of the whole committee and the past committees and administration. You know, it comes down to us representing the wants and the will of the community and the people within the community, and I certainly know that people value sports in town, or playing and being part of a team, or being in some sort of activity. So it's our goal to allow that to happen, and one way we do that is by ensuring that there's funding up and above and beyond what the athletic fees contribute to the cost of athletics. And also, though, it's going to come down to our relationship with the town council and the other side of that, now that they're part of our budget process, because that's a big deal, and that we're going to have to continue to you know, plead our case along those lines, and what's important to the district and what's important to the community and to our students. So I think all those things, and we'll do our best to keep that number down. I'm not a big fan of fees. There's the bus fee too. We pay the bus fee. Why do we pay a bus fee? Well, there's cost to doing things, and it's either a tax on people, and then it comes through raise and appropriate through a taxation, or we charge users. So, and this is a user fee just as the bus fee is. And so it's a reality of the world today. Would it be better if we had no fees? Yes. Do any other communities have zero fees? I would be hard pressed to find one. So if we can keep them as low as possible, keep the cost down as low as possible, then I think we're doing our job.
Mr. Torsha, your thoughts?
I would certainly say, looking at the possibility of lowering those costs would be something I think important. We should probably take a look at, but I think right now as it stands, the fees are generally fair. I think to prevent them from potentially going up in years past, we need to be creative. We need to be smart about how we use our money. Getting certainly our biggest bang for our buck, because sports, like others touched upon earlier, are a huge big importance to students' academic life in high school life at the high school. Certainly for resumes, but for getting into colleges, learning team building team building skills is certainly a really important task. So I would say my goal would be to not only to keep it where it is, and even look at seeing if we can make it lower potentially.
All right, Mr. Thompson. On March 27th, the school committee voted unanimously to institute a new fundraising policy that all school organizations will need to follow if they would like to run a fundraiser. Do you feel this decision will positively impact the school system, and do you feel more regulations may need to be put in place in the near future?
This is a great topic, and this is one actually I brought forward to the committee as a parent, father of two girls, one at Birchland, one at Mountain View. We're inundated with fundraisers. It goes back to the user fees and such, that there's a need for fundraising activities. But my goal is to lessen the amount of things that we ask parents to contribute to, because parents' wallets our wallets are only so big, and so we need to just kind of focus on less but still important things. We need to teach our children civic responsibility, so they can giving is part of that learning, but also look at how often we're sending things home to parents. And what those things are, and part of what we asked for the data is to see what percentage of the money or the funds raised actually goes to the education of students, or the improvement of our educational system at least. And so I think that'll be important. So I think we go through a process for a year, and then we can look back and see exactly what we've done for fundraising. And we need to look at it as a district, because parents have kids in different schools, so we have to look at how often we're sending stuff home, because I think after a while it gets saturated and we lose focus on that. So that's really just been an effort on all of our parts, but something that's really hit home for me, because as I said, I get these things all the time. A lot of them important, good things to do, good things to learn about, good things to raise funds for, but I think we're too scattered a little bit. So that's been something I'm trying to focus on, certainly in the past, and we'll continue to look at as we go forward. So,
Great, Mr. Torsha, your thoughts on this issue?
Well, this is a very important issue, and this affects. Certainly, I've been involved with a number of serving as class president, serving in other capacities where we've been raising money. I would have to say, with respect to the committee, I would have to disagree with their approach on this fundraising policy. I think the idea of adding more paperwork into the system is having firsthand knowledge of doing dine-in nights, or selling things like that, to raise the critical funds we need to for example, fund our prom, our dances, and give back to the school in different ways. I'm not sure this is maybe the best approach, and I'm not entirely sure what the end result would be. I know it was mentioned, would be in effect for about a year. But I think when you're running a club, running an organization, like I have been, and talking to many other students about this type of policy, as well as teachers and faculty, I'm just not sure the necessity of something like this. I do agree, certainly we need to keep tabulation on the amount of money, but I would say it's not as much as a problem as it might seem from the outside, as I've been very intimately involved in this process. So that's where I would not necessarily agree, though, with the policy approach, the fundraising policy approach enacted.
All right, Mr. Pachero.
Yeah, I think the first step I'd like to make is What we're talking about shows you how much this town supports education, not only in our formal budget, but also what the parents and organizations do to supplement our budget. And I think that's where the crux of this policy came in, was that we had to get some kind of a hold. We need some data to see just exactly what's going on. Look at the high school, for example. You have booster clubs out there hitting various businesses and homes. Now you have the clubs out there hitting various businesses and homes. Now you have the classes hitting various businesses and homes. Some businesses get hit 4, 5, 6 times a week. So I think we have to, gain some data so we can decide how is best to address the situation. One is to keep looking at our budget, obviously. But secondly, I think we've got to get a hold on this because we don't want to exhaust those people who are our biggest supporters. And that's the need for this policy, is to kind of get the data in front of us, look at it, and see if it can help us make more decisions. So right now, Patrick, we're in a fact-finding process. We're going to give it a year, see what we get back, the information we get back, and then see what our next step is. Because we want to make sure we keep that support in town and not overwhelm them with constant requests.
Great.
If I could just make another point on that, Patrick, if you don't mind. You know, it really, why it hits home with me is there have been weeks that I've been asked 5 times. 5 pieces of paper have come to my house via my children's backpacks, asking for some sort of donation, whether it be for a national organization, for a field trip, or some sort of whatever it might be. There's all sorts of different things. And so really, it's just to get a handle on what is actually happening, what the principals are allowing, because everything goes by the principal. So really, it's going to have to just be one more process to say, this one's happening this week, these are the funds that we're actually end up raising, and this is the percentage of those funds that will go to the East Meadow Public Schools. So I think, we are data driven by every extreme in education these days, to our fault. And that's based on national requirements, state requirements, but sometimes it's good to get some information and consolidate things so that things are working a little bit better.
All right, Mr. Torsham, you get 45 seconds as a rebuttal to that.
I would just say this. I think this kind of from what I understood from this policy, this more affects the high schoolers. It's difficult for us to regulate boosters and the PTO and whatnot. So basically, if you put those away, the only thing you really have left are the clubs like the Key Club and whatnot, who would have to make a lot of forms as a result of this new policy. I would just say I think the goal intended is perfect and sound, but I would say this is these would be filled out by teacher, faculty, and students. And when we're doing these fundraisers and whatnot, it's pertinent that we address do them immediately, as time goes by really fast. And I just don't see the complete necessity inside filling out another form, because we already get approval from the principal and from the administration, and I would credit our administration for being very much on top of it already.
Okay, Mr. Pacheco, 45 seconds.
Yeah, I just think we should remain in the fact-finding stage, Patrick. There's so much fundraising going on, all for a good purpose, but I really feel like that we have to get a hold on to know exactly what is being asked by the citizens in this town on a daily basis. I mean, you even have the Education Foundation out there now going door to door, raising money for scholarships. So it's a wide, comprehensive array of people out there asking people for more and more money. And I think that it's very important that we respect the generosity. And by respecting that generosity, that means that we also go through a process to try to keep that generosity in place, but limit it where appropriate. And I think that's very important.
Great. Mr. Torsham, each year the school committee is required to vote on whether they wish to offer the option for school choice in East Longmeadow. This year, the discussion seemed to reflect an interest in adopting school choice that we haven't seen in the past several years. Do you feel the committee is moving in a direction where school choice will eventually be allowed? And how do you feel this will impact the school system?
I think, from seeing a lot of the, this happened a couple of weeks ago, but seeing a lot of the discussion that was made about it, I think it would be appropriate to move into the direction of considering it. From a lot of what was talked about, the building principals were a lot of them were more supportive of the idea, and from, hearing of, how different schools do this, like Longmeadow, Wilbraham, they both do it. I would say, looking into maybe a more selective type of program we could do for school choice. I mean, even just having, 5, 6, 7, 8, and, giving more students the opportunity to exceed in what is a very good school district all around in academics. And considering there is certainly a cost associated with it, we would get obviously $5,000 from every student, and then considering that we have a $14,000 or $15,000 cost per pupil, it's not dramatically expensive, but obviously there's certain students that might have more needs that might have higher costs, and that's something to consider because this is, from my understanding, more of a lottery system. So I would say we should push into more of a direction of seriously considering this, and I hope next year, maybe seeing if we can, give some students at the younger levels, an opportunity to start in our school system and continue through. Because, as somebody who's been through all 5 schools, I can tell you I acquired a fantastic knowledge and education from this community, and I would, certainly I think it would be great to have other students experience that possibility, especially considering how we've had this debate about charter schools as of recently, and how those give people more of an opportunity.
So, Mr. Torch, if you were elected today, would you vote in favor, yes or no, would you vote in favor of allowing school choice?
I would. Under
yes or no?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Well, as you said already, Pat, this comes up once a year, and it's a very complex issue. I sit back and I weigh it. The first thing I always think about is, okay, this is another revenue stream. It's $5,000 per student, and it could really supplement our budget with supplies, with technology, with resources that we may need, and we could really benefit from it. Our students could really benefit from it. Then I think it through, and I started thinking, okay, now, if we do school choice, these students have to be successful as our students, just as successful. So you have to place them in gateway grades. That means you've got to place them in the 3rd grade, the 6th, and 9th, building to building, transition. So we're all transitioning together. Now you have to take a step back and say, wow, if we want them to be successful, if we're going to integrate them that way, now we have to deal with over-enrollment. And the last thing you want, it's research is clear, large class sizes diminish learning opportunities. So you have to weigh both sides of that. And as someone who's an adjunct professor of education at AIC, I was visiting the school system to the east of us. They're using school choice, a large amount, for technology. And I see the advantage of that, but I can tell you right now, visiting those classrooms, I also see the disadvantage of that. So each year, the information changes, it's data-driven by your enrollment, and it's a very complex decision.
Okay. Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, and it does come up every year, excuse me, and it's always a lively discussion because we understand that this is a good place to educate students, and so we take it serious. It always comes into the conversation is class size, and many of our classes are large now. Some of the elementary schools up to 25 per class. So to add, another student or two in those classes, $5,000 is a good amount of money, but in a $29 million budget, to add a handful of students is really not going to change much. And it is a lottery, and there are the real possibilities that some students can come with some real additional costs, special education costs, that we wouldn't have any control over, and then we would have to absorb in the budget. So our focus has been on the students of East Long Meadow, of the kids that live in the town, and it's a great place to educate students. We talk about it every year, though, because it is a possibility of additional revenue, and we're always looking at ways to ease the burden on the taxpayers. But we've considered it, and we've not collectively voted in favor for it because we believe that the benefits do not outweigh the cost to the town, and so we've decided not to go with it so far.
Great. Mr. Pachero, technology is constantly evolving and becoming a greater part of our society all the time. This year, East Long Meadow High School offered the Community Action Learning course, which piloted a one-to-one laptop initiative with the students. What sort of investment in technology do you believe the East Long Meadow public school system needs to continue to make? And do you see more one-to-one initiatives being offered over the coming years?
I've only got 2 minutes to answer this question, Patrick.
Yes.
A minute 45 now. Go ahead.
Okay, let me follow. 2 key terms. One-to-one is right, and also what I would consider a blended platform. Now, so I feel here we're on the right track with the blended platform. That means that we have our students' experiences as many different computer systems and settings so that when they post-high school career, they can be successful. So for example, we have Chromebooks and we have Macs, which do two different functions. We also have labs, and we also have carts that are wheeled into the classroom. That gives our students the ability to, once again, experience different computer systems in different locations. Now, the one-to-one is very interesting because it's actually being piloted in the community action learning class. We have one section this year. My understanding is we're going to have two sections next year. That gradual approach to see how the one-to-one works where students will actually have their own computers. Its approach will look at the advantages of students having their own computer and the disadvantages of having their own computer. So this gradual approach will hopefully put us in the direction of one-to-one in the years to come. And one final thing I want to say is let's keep an eye on also the staff. The staff also has to be trained to keep up with technology to assist our students. We have the train-the-trainer model here. For example, if a staff member has developed a certain technology expertise that advances student achievement, that staff member is asked to do a professional development workshop for other staff members. We're going to have to continue to do that. For example, when I was principal in 2009, we put overhead projectors in the ceilings of all the classrooms. Staff had to be trained to use them properly. You just can't give the equipment without the training. And I think that's very important. So, as we move forward, I think we're on the right track. We have a district-wide committee made up of many different professions to oversee this track. And I think we're going with the blended platform is key, and also secondly, gradual approach to the one-on-one, and finally implement it in the near future.
Great. Mr. Thompson, your thoughts?
There's no denying that it's our responsibility to keep up with technology. Changes at a fast pace, and so it provides a challenge. There's a huge cost to the one-on-one initiative and having some sort of computer for every student. But we're getting closer to that. We walk through the elementary schools during the day, and you can see the laptops on a cart. And you can see the sign-up sheet and how they're all signed out. Most of the time, there's some teachers that have it in their classroom every day for a good amount of time. And you can see the excitement on students when they're using the technology. I think it's a balance. I think teachers need to find the balance. They need to understand and learn how to best use the technology, but also teach our students to exist without technology. I think that's important too. And so, because we don't all have a computer all the time at our use, maybe not such a bad thing. So we're not in a huge rush to get to the one-to-one. Certainly as you get into the high school, more appropriate, writing papers and such, and having, just having a system in front of you as you're taking notes in class. It makes perfect sense. So we'll get there. I think a new high school project, if the town ever commits to something like that, great opportunity to get that initiative right off the bat and start off fresh. We're working collaboratively with the IT department. We have a capital project every year with them for technology, increased technology in the schools, and we find where it's best appropriate to spend those funds every year. And so we're getting there, but as soon as we buy some things, something's outdated and old, so we have to look at that again. So certainly a focus of the town and of the community.
All right, Mr. Dorshan.
Well, certainly. I think the community action learning initiative that we've done has been a great success. I know a number of students that are in it right now who have certainly liked the program. I think advancing our technology, we're in an age not only just in this town but nationally of it very much technology is obviously so much more into our lives and no doubt in our education. And this is and I've seen firsthand just how successful this technology can be. Going back to the carts, the carts are used consistently day in and day out. Many teachers use those for different assignments, and it's been really a great success. So steadfastly moving towards more technology, keeping in mind though that certainly we have teachers that some might be more technologically savvy than others. So making sure they're all trained properly, and they there aren't significant movements enough where it would affect their teaching. So certainly, I would say striving towards more technology has been an incredible thing so far. Even just a small example I would have in our in my AP government class right now, we use what's called Google Classroom. It's a relatively cheap thing, and we get assignments from it, and then you can turn in those assignments online. There's we use almost no paper from something like that. Something like that could be cost effective down the road. If we could use less paper and more things on computers and whatnot, that's going to be hugely important to stabilizing our budget and making sure that we're staying within our means. So I think technology has a lot of great uses. It's slowly incrementing is going to be really important, to see, what are, the pros, what are some of the cons that might come up with this and how we can fix it and make sure it's develops accordingly. But I welcome the move towards better and more technology, because I think it's had a tremendous impact on students' learning abilities.
Great. Mr. Thompson, opioids have become a large problem in not only the country, but also Western Massachusetts. What steps do you feel the school committee needs to take in order to ensure students are not abusing opioids, and what must the East Long Meadow Public School System do if there is suspicion of opioid abuse in our schools?
Yeah, big issue, very important issue, especially for our students, for our kids. Our number one goal as parents, as a community, as a committee, as all of us, people from East Long Meadow, is keep our kids safe. And so, it comes down to a couple of things. First and foremost, parents, we're all responsible for our own children, and so we have to help our children make the best decisions and teach them the best we can. And as a school, we need to provide support to parents and information. We have informational nights. Had one recently at Birchland Park. Invited parents in to have that discussion and talk about things and talk about what to look for and some of the warning signs. I think education of the students themselves, some of the true harms that opioids and other drugs can have on development and growth and health. So that's important too. And I think we have to have a good relationship as a staff, which I know we do, with our students. And the staff is really the front line of seeing students and seeing, maybe something's not quite right with someone. And, certainly the administration at the school, teachers, counselors, they're the ones who are going to be involved in the daily lives of students. So I would say they would have the greatest impact. We as a committee certainly are here to support, to provide policies, to help with the education part of it. Certainly many of us attend the nights at the different schools. So we're here in a support role, and certainly, zero tolerance as a community within the schools. But that's what we can do, is we can all work on this together and help teach kids, because they're going to make their own decisions. We can't be with them all the time. So the best that we can do is provide information.
Great. Mr. Torshire, your thoughts?
Well, certainly, the drug issue, not just opioids, but as well as other, other drugs as well, like marijuana. Just 10 years ago, we've seen a steady increase in the use of not only opioids, but marijuana. So I think it comes down to really two things. Having that education, at this, particularly the younger level, and, working with, our health department individuals, our medical community around the area, our community, to try and address and adapt measures in which we talk about this issue of opioids, because this has been, a terrible issue that's come across over very recent number of years. And the second thing, cracking down on people that, enforcing our zero tolerance policy, but as well as looking at ways, maybe there might be gaps in our policy right now, and looking at ways and improving it. It all comes down really, to communication and collaboration. Communicating, as a school committee, to our building principals, to our faculty, working with our parents and the community as well, so everyone's on the same page and trying to stop this from happening. I can tell you, over the number of years, there's certainly been an increase, unfortunately, in people that have, tried and done drugs, all types of drugs. And that is not a good, and that's not just in our community, but in a lot of communities around here. So looking at it in a collaborative fashion, this would be one of my top priorities as a school committee member, and working with my fellow school committee members to address that.
Great. Mr. Vaccaro.
Yeah, this is a very emotional issue for me, Patrick, because I'm an employee of the Bay State Medical Center Emergency Room, and one of my tasks is to deal with the addictions, the addicts that come in. And I see the devastation to the individuals, the family, the community. So what we really need in this is an extremely large, comprehensive approach. I would call it a triad approach. First, triad would be the schools. I would look at the curriculum. We have a 6 through 12 health education curriculum. I would advise that maybe we have to start looking at early intervention and start looking at maybe in the elementary grades about what it is to be a healthy person. How do you have a good well-being? So that would be my first recommendation, is the schools look at the curriculum in advancing health education to the elementary level. Also, I would expect our guidance counselors, our adjustment counselors, school psychologists can continue to have programs, guest speakers, weeks where they promote well-being. So that's the first part for the school. The second piece of the triad would be the health profession, specifically our school nurses. We commend them that they were the first in the area to know how to use Narcan. And that's a reactive process. That's someone who's already taken the step with the opioid. But they also have done piloted a survey called SBIRT, which is a pre-referral screening process in the 7th grade, which you can identify students at risk. So we have to continue to work with our school nurse and our Dr. Clark, our school pediatrician, to keep the most medical research in front of us. And the third piece of the triad is the community. And we have then our youth safety group, which promotes different programs and different guest speakers. That's made up of the East Long Meadow School System staff, East Long Meadow Police Department, the East Long Meadow Medical Field, and the Springfield Health and Human Services. And that group promotes programs beyond bringing parents, students, families together. So we have to have a comprehensive approach because it's such a challenging problem. The schools have to work with the medical profession and the community. And the school committee has to take a lead in establishing that vision.
Great, Mr. Fitzgerald. Continuing the topic of drugs, we'll have our last question. Mr. Torsha, voters will be asked on June 6th whether or not to ban recreational marijuana establishments in East Long Meadow. What is your sense of the prevalence of marijuana use by students in East Long Meadow, and do you support the proposed ban? And what impact do you think it will have on the use of marijuana by the students in the district?
We'll go into the first question in terms of the prevalence. I was looking at a number of the statistics in the presentation that was presented to the school committee, and it's been presented to other groups across the community. We have seen in roughly the last 10 years an increase from about 10 or 15% marijuana use to now more towards like a quarter use amongst, and this is, I believe, a survey that was taken around the region. I think certainly that should be a warning sign that we need to have more intervention at a younger level. Going back to what was said earlier, speaking to the ballot initiative, I would say I have to commend the board of the Department of Health in town for being very informative. They hosted a night about it about 2 weeks ago or something, which went very successfully. I certainly commend their efforts, and I would support the language inside this ballot initiative. I think it's a sensible ballot initiative. While the state of Massachusetts did approve the legalization of cannabis in the state, I would say banning it at a retail level may lessen the harm of things like edibles might do. Things like gummy bears. Young children might not be able to tell the difference between a gummy bear that might have pot in it and might not have pot in it, and may potentially ingest it and could potentially cause some serious, health problems. So having that outside of our community, while to respect to the people, the over 21-year-old individuals who would legally have the right to purchase pot, still they can do it inside another community, nearby us certainly. So I don't think it would be too much to ask, and I think it would produce some positive effects in making sure it's not inside our community. As well as another thing to point out though, that people can still grow this and people can still smoke this in our town, so that it would not affect this. It would just be the ban of it retail wise. So I would support that initiative and initiatives like that to protect our kids from the marijuana issue.
Great, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I have a lot of random thoughts on this. Not in any particular order, but my first concern is the attraction of these edibles. They do look like candy, and they do name them very close to the candy name. So I understand the lure of some doing that. At the same time, I think that my concern is that if I'm an 18-year-old senior in high school and we ban marijuana in our community, and our community is very supportive of students, very supportive of the citizens. We have a good hold on what we do here. I'd hate to see them driving half a mile down the road to Springfield and getting it anyway. So I'm really torn between, are we doing the right thing by having our students drive to get it, are we better off keeping it in town with a strong educational component, which we have? So I'm really torn right now. If you would ask me whatever was going to vote in that ballot, I'm leaning towards saying we should not have it in town. But at the same time, I still have a lot of random thoughts. I mean, one town council member said to me, my God, look at the revenue we could lose. Look at the revenue we could lose, the tax dollars we could lose with this. But then you say tax dollars, well, the federal government hasn't approved it yet. So where's that money going to go, that cash going to go? So there's so many random thoughts on this, Patrick. I think it's a very difficult issue because my concern is that if we have it in town, it can cause difficulties, but we can protect our kids and support them. If we don't have it in town, then we lose a little bit of that support and the driving to Springfield or some neighboring other town who does have it to get it. So right now, I'm leaning towards saying, no, let's keep our town away from that. If you're over 21 years old, you can find other means if this is a very important part of your life. But there's more to the issue than just a yes or no on this.
Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that as well too. You know, there's a reality of the fact that we can say we can have a prohibition here in East Long Meadow, but you know, half a mile down the road, a retail store will be open. So I think it's moderately short-sighted to say out of a gut reaction, no, let's not have it in our town, and that'll prevent it from being in our town. So that makes perfect sense. Well, maybe that's not the whole conversation, you know. And I think the voters of East Long Meadow are pretty informed and pretty in tune to what they want in the town. And so perhaps if there are certain restrictions on the location, certainly we have zoning restrictions on many things in this town, that might suit the town. Maybe the town decides not to allow retail stores. But, you know, I think we want to, you know, sit back, really have a good discussion on that and see if prohibition actually makes sense and actually will deter anything or change what people are looking to change. So a big issue coming down the line.
Okay, great. Mr. Torsha, we are now going to start the closing statement, so you'll have 60 seconds to give your closing statement.
Thank you for everyone tuning into this debate, and thank you for everyone participating in this debate again. So I would close with this. As a school committee member, if I have the honor and the opportunity to serve, I would usher in a new voice, a new type of perspective, a new take on the issues, collaborating with students, with parents, and particularly with our community. You know, I felt through my years that there's been some type of a little bit of a disconnect. I want to be that person. I want to be there, and I want to be, you know, going to the PTO meetings, going to the senior center, you know, interacting with all types of people and getting really just listening to people and getting a firsthand knowledge of how they feel about the issues, whether it might be the high school, whether it might be the drug issues. So without a doubt, I would leave you with this. I would want to communicate. I would want to be a strong communicator and be very engaged and thoughtful, as well as collaborating with everyone on the community. You know, this is a team effort. It's not just any one of us. It's a team effort. And as well as working with our teachers and our administrative staff, who I might add, you know, I think we have a terrific staff at the high school, and I have had, you know, years of great teachers. So working with those people, you know, getting ideas and perspectives from them. And so I would leave you with that, and thank you.
Okay, Mr. Fitzgerald.
Yeah, I never finished my opening statement, so this is going to be part two of my opening statement. Maybe you can edit it, okay? Anyway, I was talking about having passion with a purpose, and the two ways that I would do that. The first way is obviously for all students, pre-K through 12, that each student should have the maximum opportunity for success. And that means that they're gaining those 21st century skills to make them successful. As an effective leader, we have to make sure that our students are ready to learn and our staff's ready to instruct. And as I said before, the student achievement data is very clear that that is what's happening. It's happening remarkably well. Another way that I've done that, the best for all students, as a member of UNICO and Knights of Columbus, this year we gave out $9,000 in scholarships to 9 deserving high school students. And that tells me that my influence is much beyond the school committee. The second part of Passion for Purpose is to the town. The town gave my family and me a wonderful opportunity. I love giving back. And the most critical element in giving back is balancing the needs of the students with the needs of the town. And the most critical element is the budget. Now, as someone who's intimately involved with the budget, I've been there for the increases and the decreases. We've made sure it worked for the students and the town. So as an effective leader, I can guarantee everyone that working with the school committee, it's a we all the way through, that we were doing the best for our students, the data was clear, and we were doing the best for the town, the data was clear. We're being fiscally responsible while being educationally sound. And I would enjoy the honor of continuing the school committee for the next 3 years.
Great, thank you, Mr. Thompson.
Yeah, just thank you for hosting, Patrick. I know you took the initiative on yourself, and I commend you as a student for getting involved in local politics. It's an important thing. We're in a great time here in East Long Meadow. A great place to raise kids. I think the school system is doing great things. There's a lot of things left to be done, obviously. With the new town council, there's some transition that we're in the midst of, and I think the committee and superintendent and assistant superintendent have been doing their best and our best to help in the transition and do what's best for the students of East Long Meadow through the transition, whether it be through the budget or working collaboratively on policies and such. And so I think that's going to continue to be an issue front and center for the committee, is working with the council, and also all the projects that we talked about and all the initiatives that we have going forward. So it's been an honor and a pleasure for me to serve on the committee, not only for my students, but for all the kids that I know, personally coached, friends of my kids, and met throughout the years, seniors to kindergartners. So I hope to continue my work, and there's good things ahead for the town, and I hope I'm a part of that. So thank you.
Thank you for all coming out tonight, and I would encourage everyone watching to get out to Berkman Park Middle School on Tuesday, June 6th, in order to cast your vote for both the school committee and the marijuana ballot question. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah, nice job.